Thijs Schutyser here from Leadfeeder. Thank you for having me. I'm here to kind of present you how sales has changed in the last year to years, but the basics are very much in play. Before we dive into that, a quick little note on myself. I'm Thijs, like I said, I work at Leadfeeder. I'm part of the sales team here in Europe. Um, I'm born in Belgium, still live in Belgium as well. The advantage that working at Leadfeeder is that we are mostly remote, so myself as well. I've been working in sales for over 6 years. I studied IT, but like really fast I discovered that IT purely was not really for me. So I wanted to be at the front lines. So here I am now. In my last 2 years as well, maybe good to know is that I've helped over 200, 300 companies really get their sales and marketing processes up to speed, let's say, and optimized. And before that, I worked at several startups and consulted for several companies as well. So what are we going to do today? Well, I'm going to go over the 8 most common mistakes that I see a lot of sales reps and teams make in general. Some of them will be quite basic, but it's always good to kind of go over basics again and kind of honing down on some details you may have not thought about. So let's start with the first one, and probably something that all of you are already doing some sort of way is knowing your ideal customer profile and decision-making units very, very thoroughly. So what I see a lot is that most people kind of have an idea what their ideal customer profile is, but haven't really documented it maybe or aligned it fully with the full team and the marketing team. But before we dive into how to do so, what is an ideal customer profile for who needs a refresher on that? Well, if we're talking about an ideal customer profile, we're talking about what is or what could be a perfect customer for us. And there's a lot of attributes and a lot of parameters that we can take into account. But some that maybe will ring a bell are the region they are located in, logically speaking, the industry, the size of it, a lot of things that we can kind of take into account. It's very important to kind of have that documented and let everyone know what those are to set yourself up and to set your team up for success. The same goes for the decision-making units, as we need to know who will be or who will possibly make the decision within that customer profile. Of course, influencers are quite important as well. So let's take that all together and bundle that and make sure that we make a profile for every unit and make sure that we communicate that well. So once we have done so, we can kind of make sure that everyone is reaching out to the same kind of profiles. And why is that so important? Well, it's basically set yourself up for success, and not only yourself, but the full team. If we're just reaching out to kind of all different kind of customers, it's really hard to kind of serve that audience. The more targeted our audience and our customer profiles are, the better it will be on the short and the long term for the company and for yourself as a sales rep. So if you're having a hard time to kind of drilling down on your ideal customer profile, I would advise you to make a quick list of all your best customers. Look at, okay, what kind of attributes do we see in common? That could be industry, like I said, could be size, could be a lot of like specifics as well. Maybe they use a certain tool, or maybe they just had funding. Like you can go as specific as you want and kind of outline all those opportunities. Because once we have that, we can communicate that to every member of the team and make sure that we focus on what could possibly be a perfect customer for ours, with knowing that with the list of your best customers already taken into account. So now that we have done so, it's important, of course, that we're going to use that information. It's one thing to make it; it's another thing to, of course, use it and kind of implement it in your day-to-day. So start optimizing your lead lists and stick to your ideal customer profile. Sounds logical, I would say, but on top of that, maybe even prioritize based on what is an ideal customer profile. Like it can be quite broad profile in the beginning. So it's always good to kind of prioritize them, maybe even sometimes on gut feeling or what you feel like could be like the best customer fit. but as well communicating or trying to figure out what could be a possible customer with the lowest maintenance cost, or that has the most, like the highest lifetime value. Or maybe you want to kind of chase a certain logo to kind of use as a reference. Like, you can prioritize on a lot of things, but do it thoroughly and do it like with a purpose. What can help with optimizing those lead lists after you kind of made them is, of course, sales intelligence data and buyer intent data. What I mean with that, there's lots of sales intelligence tools out there. Maybe the most well-known one is the Sales Navigator from LinkedIn. You can kind of use lots of those tools to kind of know, okay, who can I prioritize and do it in an efficient, scalable way. And the same goes with buyer intent data. That goes like even a step further, where we're not just looking at general information such as size, industry, but we're looking at maybe if we're talking about sales intelligence, buyer intent data, have they just had funding? Are they using? Have they just implemented a certain tool? So it's more so timing based, and the same could be said for then a tool such as Leadfeeder, who's tracking website identifications. We know that they've just been on the website, so it should be the case that it could be a really good moment right now, because you could be the best salesperson in the room. If you're not reaching out to customers at the right time, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. So let us set up for success and kind of keep optimizing our lead list. Now that we have done so and kind of prepared ourselves for success, it's important when we are reaching out to prospects to respect your time. While you're doing the grind, we all know as a sales rep that it's a high pressure job, and there's lots to be done. And sometimes we kind of lose track of the fact that our prospects are humans as well. So sometimes take a moment and really think from the prospective point of view, and make sure that you're kind of reaching out to them like you would maybe like to be prospected yourself. For me, the case in that is always kind of give first and ask later. That has really helped me kind of cement this mistake, or not kind of make this mistake anymore. So I'll always try to kind of give something first, give value, make their day a little bit better, and then afterwards I can ask some of their time and maybe kind of push for a meeting or whatever. And while we're doing that, be clear in what they're signing up for. There's nothing worse than kind of being reeled into maybe a call and then noticing that the agenda is completely different than what they are kind of that they were kind of like telling you in the beginning. A time frame is the same. Like if you're saying it's going to be 50 minutes, make it 50 minutes. And even if you need to go overtime, kind of ask respectfully if that is okay, and keep communicating, of course. On to the fourth mistake that I see all of the times, and that is not diversifying your channels. It's 2021, so we all should be using a multi-channel sales cadence. We can't hone in on one channel because that's just having like more success. Of course, you can prioritize, but you need to kind of keep an open vision to all the different B2B channels that we can kind of have. And that could be phone calls, obviously, email, social, but there's so many new ones and kind of maybe even old school ones that we can bring back. A good example is at Leadfeeder, we started implementing direct mailing again through a platform that's called Reachdesk. And they kind of help us just send out cookies or whatever to kind of diversify our channel again. And with that, we kind of make it so it's more successful with every kind of touch point that we do. It's unique, but at the same time, you can't know what kind of channel your prospects prefers. Is it the phone? Is it the email? Is it social, or whatever it could be? Fifth, while we're kind of doing that multi-channel outreach, and if I'm talking about multi-channel outreach, I would kind of do that as well on a multi-champion way. So on an account-based selling way, we need to personalize our touch points. And if we're talking about personalization, adding just the name or the company name, some standard kind of fields, that's not personalization anymore. That's maybe back in 2000 or something like that. Before I was a salesperson, that could be seen as personalization. but we need to go way beyond that at this time and age. So first of all, again, all that we've just discussed previously need to be taken into account when we're doing those personalizations. A decision-making unit is specific. A CFO and a CEO don't need the same message most of the time. They have fully different goals. So adjust accordingly and adjust your value proposition accordingly. Adjust the give first mentality as well, and kind of take that into account. The channel as well. So if I'm sending out an email, well, probably that's going to be a little bit longer than, for example, my LinkedIn connection request. Based on the channel, I need to adjust my personalization, my messaging, etc. And if you're kind of stuck and kind of don't know how to kind of personalize a little bit more, start maybe using different mediums. For example, I use a lot of video or GIFs to kind of spice it up a little bit and make sure that I'm personalizing and putting some extra efforts in my touch points. And that really sets myself apart from all the other fully templated outreaches that are out there and that are getting a little bit spammy, of course. And if you don't know how to personalize, I would say just find the why. There should be a why, that why you're reaching out. Why did you choose that prospect? Kind of include that information in some sort of way. Of course, packaging that message accordingly is kind of important. But if that prospect is in the same industry as another client, well, you can kind of use that probably and use a client success story to kind of do that personalization, etc. But kind of really find a why you're reaching out to them and lead with value and personalize accordingly. Now we're doing everything okay. We're setting up ourselves up for success. That doesn't mean that we will be successful from the get-go. A sales cadence and just doing sales, it's a constant adjustment. We cannot sit still. So we need to measure everything, because if you can't measure it, it's really hard to improve it, or you can't even improve it, in my opinion. So first of all, use your CRM system. There's so many sales reps that are not using their CRM system to their advantage. They all think from the sales manager point of view that like a CRM system is just to control them, to kind of check up on them. But once you kind of use a CRM system and the good sense, you'll see that it will help you as much as it will help your leaders. And with that, your leaders will be able to help you as well. But don't just track meaninglessly, track everything with a purpose. When you're tracking an activity, you need to know why you're tracking that activity, or kind of discuss with your manager what they're trying to get out of that tracking. If I'm tracking every touch point that I'm doing, well, I can make awesome reports based on those touch points. The same goes when you need to maybe adjust your links with different kind of UTM codes. Well, why are we doing that? Well, because that way we can take into account channel, medium, touch point. So for myself, for example, I've set up a full UTM tracking template where I kind of adjust the UTMs based on which channel it is, which medium it is, which touch point it is. And I have a full report that kind of shows me, okay, which channel, which medium, which touch point is bringing in the most meetings for myself. And based on that, I can adjust, I can improve, and I can share that as well with my colleagues, of course, and we can kind of strive to be a better salesperson in general. We're having an awesome time. We're preparing yourself for success by choosing our ideal customer profile. We're kind of doing every step along the way, and that should mean that we're getting meetings. Hopefully you're getting meetings as well. And if you're getting those meetings, start them with an agenda. It's really hard to follow any meeting if there's no agenda. It can be quite simplistic, and it can be like even 2 or 3 sentences, but kind of let the other people know what the agenda will be, and ask them if there should be anything added to that agenda, because that's like discovery just starts right there, because then you can kind of directly know what is the expectation of the other person from this meeting. If you don't kind of start with an agenda and just get into it and ask like if there's what they are expecting, it's not going to be very specific, but because you already laid out like the groundwork and then let them kind of build on top of that. That's a great kickoff of your discovery. And by that, we can go into the pitch and of course the offer afterwards. If you're not really used to kind of structuring your meetings, I kind of started out with just with kind of looking at frameworks. A very general framework is Pastor. I invite you to kind of Google it and kind of use it maybe to kind of have a little bit more structure in your meetings and set yourself up for success in that sense. And on a quick side note, while we're at the meetings and kind of giving you some tips on meetings, please put on your camera. There's nothing worse kind of joining a sales call and the others and the sales rep is not putting on the camera. First of all, it's not very human-like. It feels like we're very much apart from each other. And on top of that, research has shown that it just immensely helps with closing the deal. Gong did an awesome blog post about it. So if you want the link, let me know. But if you do a quick Google, you'll see that they've discovered that the chance of closing goes up 41% if you put on your camera, which kind of makes sense. And as last but not least, not setting up clear next steps. If we're doing everything all right, there's a possibility that the prospect will end up buying just so and so. But the reality is that everyone is quite busy. And if we not end our meeting and kind of end our full connection or maybe our phone call even with a clear next step, then everyone will just go their own way and it will kind of just be there. So what I do is I try to include everything I found in discovery and during my demo call, for example, and kind of use that to kind of reel down on a next step. So that could be, oh, we've just kind of what I've discovered is that you're struggling with XYZ. So it makes sense that we kind of go into that next week. When would that work for you? And then don't settle for something big, because a lot of the times on the call, the other person will probably not know how to kind of do the next step, maybe, or kind of still needs to figure out their agenda. So they'll come back with something really vague, such as, oh, somewhere next week I'll have a meeting with the team and then we'll talk about it and then come back to you. That's like the standard response from a lot of the prospects. But we can use that. If they say next week, well, okay, when is that meeting? Oh, it's on Wednesday. Perfect. Can I call you on Thursday? Perfect. Do you prefer your mobile or do you prefer an online call like we're doing today? Like, go as specific as possible, go step by step, and then we can kind of fully control what the next steps are. Don't settle for I'm going to call you, because that's just not going to work most times. Of course, if they really persistent on that, we can of course make some unique situations, but try to keep control as much as possible. If they say, oh, I'm going to call you next week, I really prefer that. Go say, okay, call me next week, Wednesday. But if I haven't heard from you by Thursday, I'm going to give you a call myself. And then recap that all in an email to set yourself up for that next step. I've seen that ghosting just goes immensely down if you have those next steps. Plus, even if they ghost you, you can kind of leverage that next step that you have agreed upon before to kind of play into their guilt, because you can kind of maybe send them a quick email after you try to call them, they do not show up. Like, oh, like I was from the impression last time that we spoke, we would be able to speak today again. I'm not able to reach you. When could that happen? And by that, you can kind of easily reconnect and set yourself up for success. I'm positive that only this is a mistake that I've made for quite a long time, settling for a vague next step. Once I started kind of really emphasizing this, I've went from being maybe an average sales rep to one of the best performing sales reps at this time at least. So really made a big difference for myself. Hopefully it can be can kind of do the same for you guys. So to recap really quickly, eight most common mistakes. So what I want you guys to do is try to really know what your ideal customer profile is, revamp it, communicate it, make sure that it is aligned through the team. Use that to optimize your lead list. Once you start reaching out, respect your prospect time, but diversify your channels. So you're kind of making as many opportunities and as many chances for yourself. While you're doing that, do that personalized, keep tracking every touch point that you're doing so you can optimize. And once you get those meetings, structure them and make sure that you have some next steps set up. So I want to thank you for this, for kind of joining me today. If you guys have any questions or can be of help of any sort, let me know, reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn real quickly. I'd love to connect with you guys and speak to you guys soon.